And to provide deeper insights into the protest by civil society and opposition groups at the National Assembly demanding that the ongoing Electoral Act amendment include a provision making the electronic transmission of election results mandatory, I have with me Hauwa Mustapha. She's convener, Movement for the Transformation of Nigeria, otherwise referred to as Motion. Thank you very much for joining us on Newsnight. And what an outing you had today. Was it successful? Did it achieve the objective?
Very well, because for us, primarily, the objective is to categorically express our feelings, our disappointment, first of all, with the way the Senate, the National Assembly appears to be dilly-dallying, with the fate and the interest of Nigerians. And that we made our voice very, very clear and loud. And I think that's the most important thing. And then we also saw that broadly, we had support of Nigerians from everywhere. Those that were not able to come, I mean, if you go through the social media, if you go through, generally we had support. So, and I think that's the most important thing. So to that extent, it was quite successful.
I'm sure you heard the President of the Senate, Godswill Akpabio, over the weekend, where he doubled down and said, look, we will not be intimidated over this electoral act, especially that vexatious clause 60, where it talks about mandatory transmission of results. As representatives of the people, what do you make of the Senate President's stance?
I think the response for me is to say that the people will not be intimidated by whatever stand, the Senate President or whoever, in the National Assembly decides to do against the people. That it is high time that the people, the Senate, the elected officials also understand that we are the people that matter most, and that it is our voice that must count, and that they are there only because either through some defaults, processes, or even by choice of the people, whichever way, they are there. So they are there holding people's power and not their own power. And to that extent, we cannot be intimidated because we stand on our right to demand, and they do not have the right to override our demand, except if they carelessly misuse power. And that is what we have been seeing all along. So I think that statement is also very insensitive. That statement, I mean, it tells to the normal thing, the tradition we see with politicians, where when they're looking for power, they say all kinds of things to people, cajole, say all kinds of sweet nothings. And once they get there, they feel that, who are you to talk? They have they have the control of power. They have and then they can do what they want to do the way they want to do it, and think that citizens can just citizens don't matter. But we are here to tell them that indeed citizens matter, that indeed they are only there holding, in trust, power for the citizens. They are there for citizens and they're not for themselves, contrary to the way they use power and the way they understand power. So for me, I think that to that extent, the statement is quite unfortunate. But like I said, our response to that kind of statement is just to remind him and remind any other person who thinks in the way that he thinks that power does not belong to him. Power does not belong to a small number of people that hold the National Assembly, the executive, or wherever. Right. Power belongs to the people. And when the people come to the streets and say, this is what we want, you had better listen.
Now, speaking of the people, one of the arguments being put forward by some lawmakers is if indeed they go ahead with this transmission of election results in real time, now because of the broadband penetration in Nigeria, about 50% or so, that if they were to go ahead with it, a large chunk of the voting population may be disenfranchised. Do you agree with that? I mean, don't you think there's some sense in that argument? So
part of the process of ensuring the success of real-time transmission is also to ensure that the vehicle that drives that real-time transition is also put in order. We're talking about 21st century, for goodness sake. We're talking about a world that is going digital, or that has gone digital. Right. We're talking about a world where, I mean, AI is the engine that is driving almost everything around development, including election processes. So you can't, there should not be an excuse. You know, this is the time. And if you also imagine the huge amount of money that is budgeted for electoral process, right. What do we need? It's simple, you know. We have broadband. What does it take? Every village, there's hardly a village today in Nigeria where people do not use phones. There's hardly a place in Nigeria today where people do not have access to radio communication. So what are we talking? Explore those facilities that make access to those major, you know, those facilities of communication.
In those remote places.
In those remote places. Right. Utilize them. So we can't, if indeed there cannot be any form of excuse. Any excuse given these days or from anywhere around communication or reachability of the people anywhere in this part of the world, then it means that you are deliberately refusing to do critical thinking. And when you deliberately refuse to do critical thinking in this era, you are deliberately being wicked. You are deliberately refusing, you know, to abide by rules of accountability and transparency. Otherwise, there should not be excuse.
Beyond this protest that you're carrying out, is there any attempt on your part, the CSOs, and of course all who have come out to protest against the rejection, in quote, of that clause? Have you reached out to the Senate itself to find out the thinking behind you know, dropping or rejecting, if you like, this particular clause?
Oh yes.
Okay.
Yes, we aside from, you know, contacts that we make with the Senate, we're also Nigerians. We read through what the comments are, or the way they relate or respond to how Nigerians are thinking. And for us, it's also a continuous process. You know, even after the protest today, we also intend to one-on-one, you know, meet with the committee. Right. We have also tried to address them and also raise our points and share our points with them. And so the communication continues, the interaction continues, even beyond the protest.
On a final note, if the Senate does not budge, what next?
The people will speak. They will hear from the people. We will continue action. In the language that is patriotic, in a language that also recognizes the rule of law, right. in a language that is civic. But definitely, this is not the end of seeing the citizens, you know, voice their anger or express themselves. Right. We will continue to express ourselves. We continue to hold the people, you know, the leaders accountable, but in a very civic understanding our civic responsibilities, understanding our boundaries with respect to rule of law, because we are very we are good citizens. All that we are asking for is a country that is, you know, accountable, leaders that are accountable, leaders that are transparent, and a country where everybody feel a sense of worth and self-esteem, that yes, and pride that this is my country, Nigeria, and this Nigeria is not just for anybody, it is working for me, and that is why we want to have the pride.
Thank you very much.
Before we close, it's very important for me to say this, that because earlier there's this assumption that the protest today was a combination of civil society and some other groups. I think it's very important for us to clear the fact that those that organize the protest today, there's a distinction between the civil society organizations and then some of the political persons that we saw. This is not to say that we do disagree with the alignment of reasoning. Right. However, it's also important to understand that in terms of planning for the protest, in terms of coordinating the protest, there is no political undertone, there is no political association.
Thank you. Hauwa Mustapha is a convener movement for the transformation of Nigeria. Motion. Thank you very much for joining us on
You're welcome.